Today we're focusing on the close range meta, and there have been a lot of changes to weapons like the Armaguerra, the Blixen, Marco, and several others. So I'll be focusing on the absolute meta as well as a few other options that are very close because they've actually given us a pretty healthy balance. But before we get too deep into that, I want to give you a quick heads up that Gamer Advantage has boosted the discount an extra 10%, stacking with my promotion code, which is just JGOD at checkout for Call of Duty Champs, which is going on this weekend. So if you have a lot of screen time, it might be something worth looking into. Even if you do have a prescription, they are able to fill that as well. And on top of that, if Optic ends up winning out, you'll receive a $50 gift card inside your order. So we start off with the Modern Warfare AUG 556 version, and there are other weapons you can include, probably the Fennec because of its TTK, but there are a lot of glaring issues when you look at the Modern Warfare weapons, whether it's mobility, reload speed, aim down sight, sprint to fire, whatever it is, there are glaring issues that just hold those weapons back. So for this one, we'll go ahead and be focusing on no barrel, no muzzle, and this keeps it relatively fast because this gun will feel slow. We got tack laser for better aim down sight. You could go with the 5 milliwatt if you want to be a little bit more hip fiery. You go forged tack CQB comb, stippled grip with the 60 round NATO mag and the commando foregrip. Commando foregrip does hurt your strafe speed quite a bit, so you could actually drop that and maybe go on a 30 round mag and put on sleight of hand if you wanted to get the extra attachment. So you would just deselect there, go with 30 round, and then go with sleight of hand, and that would probably give you the best mobility for this weapon without having that penalty of the strafe speed. PPSH has kind of been there untouched for the longest. It got kind of nerfed into the ground, but then everything else is starting to get nerfed, so it's kind of had that balance point where it's still pretty viable. Obviously, there are pros and cons with using a weapon that is primarily geared towards hip fire, but it could be a lot of fun. You just got to know how to use it, its strengths and weaknesses, but it definitely competes with the TTKs if you're looking for something that will delete people. So we got the recoil booster, the 230mm Kavaliskaya, we got slate reflector, remove stock, fleet, quick, pine tar, Gorenko, hollow point, and then this pistol grip, which is kind of more geared towards all hipfire attachments. If you want to go even tighter, you could go tight grip, but that is obviously comes down to preference. The next honorable mention, we get the AS44. This is a super niche weapon that has a lot of drawbacks. You burn through ammo pretty quick. It doesn't have the fastest reload, but in a one-on-one scenario, you probably will not lose. Even to a shotgun that catches you off guard, this thing absolutely melts. There are some sniper support builds, but since we're focusing only on close range, this one is the delete factor. Just make sure you're in a good position where you can get to a quick reload, and keep in mind that you do have a rifle and this is not SMG mobility. So the build we'll be using is recoil booster, the Empress Falcon, Slay Reflector, Kavaliskaya Custom, the sleight of hand, which helps with the reload. We got Hatch fully loaded, Lengthen, and Carver. You could actually go in a hollow point, but I think the extra bullet velocity just feels like you get a little bit better bullet reg. You don't want that ghost bullet feel from bad hit reg from low bullet velocity. So this is kind of how I would build that one out. Then we got the MP5, which got buffed, and I was kind of more leaning towards the OTS for a while, but this essentially becomes the OTS with a 50 round mag instead of 40, which kind of solves a lot of the issues with that weapon. Agency suppressor, Tiger Team Spotlight, Bruiser grip, 50 round mag, and then Serpent. And the benefit of this is you don't have to run task force for those extra meters. If you do, you can, but in general, if you run any blueprint pretty much with a no barrel, you're going to get the cleaner iron sights, which is kind of desirable about the weapon, especially after the buff. And that brings us to the tippity top tier of viable, but just being outside of meta. These options are so good. You're going to feel like you're not penalized by not running the meta, but they are definitely not the meta, just quite there yet, but they're still very great options. They either have some kind of glaring issue that's holding them back, or the other options that we'll see when we get to the meta chaser section are just superior in most other categories. So first one is the Vanguard Volk. You could build this as a hipfire build. You could build it as sniper support. This one's kind of a little bit more of a mix of between, and it gives you really good range up to about 29 meters up close. So you could double this as a sniper support, or you could actually use it as close range because the TTK is very competitive. So what we're going to see here is recoil booster, Kravsnik 428mm 05V, Slay Reflector, the Reisdorf adjustable, Perfectionist on hand, tape grip. We got Gorenko subsonic, and then the skeletal. Keeping in mind that tape does help a ton with movement, especially when we're using a rifle. But if you want to go ahead and use amped because you don't want to waste an attachment, essentially, you could run amped and then swap that out for something else, maybe just for only ADS speed or whatever the case is. But this is an overall very solid build. very low recoil, and the bullet velocity is pretty good. If you feel like you need more, you can always go to lengthen, but you will show up on the minimap. Then that brings us to the Type 100, and the Type 100 has probably about 3 or 4 different builds. Generally, you want to go with the fastest TTK one. The biggest drawback of this weapon is going to be the damage per mag. You can go with the 36 round and have to go with the sleight of hand, and this thing will allow you to win your one-on-ones, and that's what makes it incredibly broken. You will almost never lose a one-on-one catching someone point blank. You guys both pull the trigger. You're probably not losing with this thing up to about 20-ish meters. You're just not going to lose if you can control the recoil, which some people may struggle with. But overall, recoil booster, rapid, slate reflector, the folding, sleight of hand, quick, leather, subsonic, 36 round, and the compact. If you feel like you want to go a little bit bigger, just for a little bit more comfort level, the 48's TTK isn't insanely slow by any means, but it does help having those extra 12 bullets to maybe get 2 or 3 downs in a scenario where you got to reload. It's just a little bit more versatile, but overall, the 36 round is the one that will delete people. And then that's going to bring us to the number 4 ranked loadout, which I don't think is necessarily meta, but it competes. The biggest problem is for the Sten is that it covers half your screen. Whether you're on console or on PC at 120 FOV, it covers over half of your screen, and that is a problem for a lot of people. If you're attack sprinting nonstop to cancel, you lose tons of visibility. So that is the major drawback. In terms of TTK, mobility, recoil, damage per mag, almost every other category, the Sten is essentially meta. But the problem is it covers your screen. So if you can deal with that, you will enjoy this weapon, and it definitely slaps. So we got recoil booster, the rapid, slate reflector, Gfuel custom, acrobatic, quick, taped, lengthen, 50 round drum, skeletal, and we can also go subsonic if you want to stay off the minimap, since it doesn't necessarily impact your TTK. That's what we've noticed with a lot of the change to these weapons. We could switch from hollow point, where it was a huge advantage in closing that gap on TTK in terms of consistency, and now it's really not that important where they've changed the values. You can mostly go on subsonic for the vast majority, versus before it was like, well, half the Vanguard guns need hollow point and half of them need subsonic, because you don't need the hollow point. Then that brings us into the top 3, and this is the meta chaser category. I will say that these ones really come down to preference, play style, skill level. There's all these other factors on how you want to use the weapon. There's not like a one size fits all. This is the absolute best, but it's really down to these 3. My preference is the Marco. I like the way it feels. I like the fire rate. I like the recoil, even though it's mostly vertical and then it does this weird cut to the right. Besides that, this thing, it feels great. So that's the one we'll focus on now, and then we'll get into the meta chaser. So the Marco is going to be the same build we've pretty much been running for a while now. Recoil booster, Feto Lesto, slate reflector, the Amarito for FR, the momentum, quick, tape grip, the Namdu 64, or the 48. The 48 is definitely good. The 64 will allow you to compete in quads, especially when we go into titanium trials. This is going to be one of those weapons that is definitely an outlier because of its damage per mag. We got subsonic, and then the skeletal stock. And again, that's more of a mobility build. If you struggle with recoil, you might want to change an attachment here or there. And that brings us to the meta chasers, which the Blixen's been nerfed a couple times now, and it's brought it really in line with the Marco. And it's currently bugged. They did it in the patch notes where it will be fixed, but instead of nerfing the mobility a little bit, they ended up buffing it the other way. But we got recoil booster, the Bergstrom 17, slate reflector, the Bergstrom MB, or you could do no stock, equivalent right here. Remove stock is really preference. Perfectionist, quick, hatch, hollow point, or subsonic. Like I said, you can choose either or. Subsonic is generally the way to go now for most of these builds. 54, and then the compact gives you the extra strike speed. Some people are going the RMK, which this one is a little hard to control, but it does have more consistent TTKs if you can land the shots. Then the custom gives you a little bit better mobility when you're strafing and stuff like that, so some people do prefer that, but I like the Bergstrom just because it makes it so it feels like I have no recoil on the weapon. And that brings us to the absolute meta right now, and I think it's kind of there, and then like a hair worse is the Marco and the Blixen. It has a very good TTK, it has a very fast fire rate, and the recoil isn't all that high, so it has a very low skill ceiling in terms of anyone can use it, which is always a plus. We got recoil booster, the short, slate reflector, the skeletal, steady, quick, grooved, 60 round mag, subsonic, and compact. Some people are still rocking with the 72 round. I prefer the 60 just because the TTK is a little more consistent. If you want an even better TTK, you can go with the 34 round mag, and that is a very solid option, but this is primarily okay for solos. Damage per mag mag will kill you in a gunfight. So 60 is generally the most versatile, and then you go with the short because it doesn't have a ton of recoil or anything like that, or you go with the third one, which will increase your damage, your range, all those good things, but it also hurts your recoil. So this is more of a little bit of a higher skill option. And so in general, most people probably lean towards the short, even though the body 315 is generally the more consistent and more damage, more destroy someone TTK. Appreciate y'all support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.